Hi scrapbookers, it's Katie Scott, and first of all I want to apologize in advance because my dog is here and she has a chewy bone, and so you can probably hear her chewing voraciously. She's a retriever, and so she just really enjoys chewing. So today I'm going to be doing a CHA knockoff, and this is one of the ideas. And the knockoff part of it is these were samples from the CHA floor, and they're using a Silhouette, I believe, a Silhouette die cut mat or a placemat, and there's another example. That example is from Simple Stories. So we've got circles, and they're cut out, I believe, with the Silhouette or an electronic die cutter, and this one is from Jillibean Soup. And so what they've done is they've taken the Silhouette mat, and I think this is the same one. It looks very similar. Yes, I believe it is. I got this on the Silhouette. Excuse me. I still have a cold. But I cut that out on my Silhouette cutting mat. And so I've already taken off all of the circles. So what I'm going to do is, whoops, got one little piece here that didn't quite get cut properly. Let me just trim that. But there's the cutting mat, or the placemat, and we're seeing a lot of those from the latest CHA, and I really think that if you have a Silhouette die cutter, you can just make so many fun placemats. So I thought I would make two today. This one, and also this was a Polaroid, and I just kept, I took the Polaroid, so I just had the cut file for this one Polaroid, okay? And then what I did is I reduced the size a little bit in the Silhouette, and then I selected it, and then I selected the option to fill the page, so it made me a grid of like 9 of those. So this is going to be the one easy way to fill up the page, and then this one I assume will take a little bit longer. But let's go with both of those. And then the story that I'm going to be telling, I'm actually thinking that I want to do several pages, but two things. One is this sticker on this basic gray knee-highs and bow ties of the car, but also Debbie Hodge has a new podcast, and the first podcast episode is about cars. And so I have 4 of these sheets, so I'm going to challenge myself to tell 4 different stories about cars. Yeah. Anyways, I thought this was a great one to use because, you know, the wheels on the bus go round and round and it's a circle. Haha. Okay, so the easiest way to get started is let's use a coordinating 6x6 paper pack, and this is by Cosmo Cricket. It's called Baby Jane, but I think the colors really coordinate with these colors on the basic gray. I mean, they're almost exactly the same. So let's use those. And what I want to do is I can use this as my sort of template, and I'm just going to cut this freehand, so just slightly bigger, so I'll be able to tape it onto the back. And that's one of the things I really love about the 6x6 pads is that you can instantly have all these different colors that are already going to match up perfectly. So there's one. I almost think I should have done that a little bit bigger. And just to save a little time, I'm going to cut 2 at a time. Let's see. I think the circles are going to take much longer, but this I think will be pretty quick. So there's 2 more. And in these 6x6 paper packs, there's usually 2, well, not all of them, but a lot of times there's 2 of each pattern. So for me at least, I really feel a lot freer cutting into the 6x6 pads than I do a 12x12 piece of paper. And I don't know why. It just is. I'm sure other people have that same little psychosis. other scrapbookers at least, right? I think we do. Okay, let's see how we're doing on this. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I just need 2 more. It doesn't really matter. Let's just this blue. Let me see. It would be good if I had 3 of each. So there's 2 reds. There's 2 kind of with the white background. Or a yellow. Huh. I think maybe another yellow would be a good idea. Another yellow and another teal. So here's another yellow. And here's a different teal. So these, this pattern just felt kind of retro to me. So I don't have a photo picked out yet, but what I'm going to try to do is find a photo from like the 50s or 60s. I'm so sorry. This cold is just hanging on for dear life. It doesn't want to go away. It just keeps bothering me. Grr. Okay, so I've got now, I think, 9 different little swatches. So I'm just going to lay them out here so that the values of the colors make sense. Because if I've got like 2 that are reading yellow, I wouldn't want them to be like right next to each other. So I want them to be spread out a little. So let's just... Almost there. Almost there with this. Okay, I think I like that. That's the arrangement. And so I'm just going to lay those in back. And in order to do that, I'm just going to use regular tape. And let's see. That one's going to go here. And what I think on some of these, you'll want the pattern to be straight on, and others it won't matter as much. It just depends on if the pattern is something that ought to be straight or not. This one kind of ought to be straight, I think. I don't think I cut it big enough. There we go. It fits. It's almost perfectly straight, but I'm going to call it good. So that one is taped down. I can hear Jessie. She's just going to town on her bones. She's a good dog. And I haven't, I've been kind of playing around in my scrapbook room all day, so I only brought her for 1 walk, and we usually go for more than 1 walk. We're going to do 1 more walk, but she doesn't know that yet. So she's being a good dog. She's still a puppy, so she's still very active. So while I was listening to that podcast, I started thinking about some of my car stories. And one car story... So I should probably write these down, right? So I don't forget them. Oops. Just getting a little pad of paper out. That one cute. And I just need a little pen. Okay. So one story is Boston. Another story is my oil change. I have the story of my first car. I have a story of the Camaro. I've got a story of driving to Cape Cod. I'm just going to think of 10 stories real quick here, and then I'll tell you what the stories are as I'm doing the rest of this, so you won't be so bored. I have my story of my grandpa's car. I have the story of, well, let's do my minivan right now. I have a story of, let's see, I'm trying to think. Oh, when I was a kid. And I have a story about jumping, and I've got a story about, oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think of one more story. And I just want to just brainstorm. I've got a story of maybe my dad's car. Okay, so the first story is Boston. And so I grew up in New England, and if you've ever driven through Boston, you know that it's crazy. And so everyone drives really fast. And I had this car. It was a Volkswagen. I think it was a Volkswagen Fox. Maybe. I don't know. It wasn't like a popular car, but I think it was a Volkswagen Fox. And I bought it from a friend of mine who I went to high school with. And I bought it for $400. And this was like 1987, say. 1988. I don't know. Somewhere in that area of time. And this car was like, it didn't have any heat, first of all. And I lived in Maine. So it was like so cold. And that wasn't like even, whatever. I didn't care so much. But other things about this car didn't work. Like, and also like if you lifted up the floor mat, there was a hole in the floor so you could actually see it was like the Flintstones. You could actually see the road underneath you. So you wanted to be real careful if you sat over there. But one time I had this car, and we were driving through Boston, and we're driving like 80 miles an hour. I'm driving 80 miles an hour. I'm with a friend, and the windshield wipers didn't work on this car. So we were pretty clever. We set up this, we tied ropes to the windshield, so then you could just do this to make the windshield wipers go. Seriously? And so we're driving through Boston, 80 miles an hour, and it starts pouring rain. Like, not just a little bit of rain, like blinding rain. And I live to tell. I know that doesn't sound like a very exciting story, but it was seriously like, it could have ended right then and there. It was so dangerous and so crazy. And by the time it kind of started pouring like that, we were so far into it, like there's no way, because some of the roads up in New England, like if you get off one highway, you're like automatically on another highway. So it wasn't like I could just get off the highway. It also wasn't like I could start going slower. It was just insane. So that's one story. That's my Boston story, driving through Boston. My next story is the story of the oil change, and this has to do with my first car. And my dad, like, I saved money to buy my first car. I bought it was a Dodge, and I bought it for $1,200 with my babysitting money. And it was babysitting money that I earned while babysitting at the house next door to Stephen King's, and also babysitting Howie Day, who lived 2 houses up from me. And he is like a pop singer now. He sang that song Collide, but at the time he was like 3 years old. And I used to babysit for him, and I saved my pennies, and I bought my first car. So there's the first layout, or that's going to be one layout. One placemat is done. So let's move on to the next one. That was fairly easy. I have a feeling the circles are going to be much harder. So now we're going to go with this type of a look. And I think I'm going to switch paper packs here. I'm going to use the basic gray RSVP line, I think, instead of that Cosmo Cricket line. And I still think, though, that the colors coordinate. So here's the colors of the sticker sheet that I'm using with the car, and then here are the papers from this line. I actually think I might want one more paper pack to kind of complete that out. So let me go grab that. And I think I'm going to choose, I've got a couple choices here. I've got a Jillibean Soup, and then I've also got an Amy Tangerine, and yeah, those are the two that I'll also draw from. I think they're still just fine as far as the colors all coordinate well enough for me. So what I think I'll do with this, with these, and I don't know where the picture's going to go yet, so I'm going to fill in the whole spot. But what I think I'll do is I'll do, like, when I fill in these circles, I'm going to fill them in threes. So let's try that, and I'll keep on talking. So my first car, no one really told me about changing the oil. It just, you know, wasn't something my dad ever even mentioned. He wasn't that handy of a guy, so I was really lucky with my husband. I always tell him I would marry him over again for the sheer fact that he can fix things, because men in my family never really knew how to fix stuff. They weren't very mechanical. My dad was like an outdoorsman, but he really wasn't, like, he didn't know how to screw in a light bulb kind of guy. Okay. Just trying to see where this went. I guess this went in, okay, this shape. So I've used the cutout kind of as a template to cut the shape here. Does that make sense? I hope it does. But anyways, nobody told me about changing the oil. So I had loaned my car to my high school boyfriend, and he was driving in Maine once, and he said the car, he was driving on the highway, I think he was driving from Bangor to Portland, and the car like caught on fire. And it was because I never changed the oil, and yeah, who knew? But we actually, that car I bought for $1,200, but and I was in like a minor little rear end accident when I was in high school, and so when, like, the insurance company at that time paid me, like, I don't remember the exact numbers of it anymore, but I want to say they paid me like $600 or $900 for the car. And then when that car finally, you know, caught on fire and died, the place where he pulled it over bought it, ended up buying it for parts. And so between that rear end accident and and I just want to get the diagonal on these. And so between that rear end accident, for the property damage, which I never got the car fixed, I just drove it with a dent forever after that. And the selling it for parts, I recouped all of my money on my first car. And I think when I sold my second car, I recouped all of my money. Like, I bought it for $400 and I sold it for $400. I'm not kidding. I really did that. My husband, his parents used to buy RVs and drive up to Alaska, and they would do the same kind of, well, they actually fixed up the car. I never fixed up a car. I just made it worse. But they would fix up their RVs and then sell them for the same amount of money that they bought them for. It was pretty cool. So how about, let's do this. circle right here. And so I'm just trying to get the same size circle so I can, that fits, fit it in that little slot there. And so I think another way to do this would be to, if you cut out on your silhouette this shape like over and over again, but I'm not that patient. And I don't mind cutting these out, and hopefully you don't mind me telling you all my stories. So my number 3 car story is, hold on, I just want to line those up, and then I'll set that down, come on. And so I wanted to get these 3 so that they're just on the same diagonal. I think that's important. But my first car, yeah, I kind of told you about my first car. I bought it with my own money, and in Maine you could get your driver's license when you were 15, so I did that, and it was great. It was, I just remember loving being able to go. I loved the freedom that the first car brought. It was really awesome. And so some of my friends had kind of fancier cars, but I never really cared about how fancy the car was. I just want a car that's going to go, and that's all mine, that I don't owe any money on. So even now when we buy a car, we like to just buy it. But that said, we drive it for a long time. So I've had my current minivan, and that's number 7 on the list, but I've had that since my kids were babies. So it's a Toyota, and I'm planning to drive it until it dies. We have no immediate plans to replace it, even though it's kind of getting, it's getting a little older. We had to have fix some things on it recently, but it's, as long as it runs, I'm going to keep on driving it. So the number 4 story is the story of the Camaro. So one of my high school boyfriends kind of followed me down here to Florida, and he went to college in Tampa, and I went here in St. Petersburg, and something something happened, and he had to go home in a hurry. I'm not really sure what, because I had broken up with him, and then he followed me down here anyways, and then we didn't really see each other. He was in Tampa and I was in St. Pete, and they're across the bay from each other. So it takes about 30-40 minutes to get from Tampa to St. Pete. But anyways, he had to go home in a hurry for whatever reason, and he called and said, and I didn't have it when I went to college. I had these 2 cars before I went to college that I bought with my own money. But I think my dad was worried that if I had a car in college, I wouldn't study enough. So he made the rule that I couldn't have a car in college. And I was like, that's so stupid. Because first of all, I bought the car with my own money. And he was just like, I don't know why, but he just wasn't having it. He just was not going to let me bring my old beater car to Florida with me. So he laid down the law, and I was still, even though I was going off to college, I still had to follow the rules to a certain extent. And so I sold my cars. I had one at a time. I didn't have 2 at a time. But I sold my car before I went to college, and really St. Petersburg, especially back in the late 80s, early 90s, was a place where you need a car to get around. I mean, there is busing here. There's public transportation, but it really wasn't a good option for an 18-year-old girl. It just, no. It just isn't, I guess you could have, but I didn't. And so I didn't have a car for the first 5 years that I lived here in Florida. Even when I went off to law school, I lived across the street from law school, but for about a year, during those 4 or 5 years that I didn't have a car, I got to drive my old boyfriend's car. So he had left back for Maine for I don't really know why, but in a hurry. And he had to leave so suddenly that he left his car here. And so he called and said, if you want the car, you know, you can go over to Tampa. And I don't know if he mailed me the keys, but somehow he got the keys to me. And I had somebody drive me over to Tampa, and I got his, the bitchin' Camaro. There's a Dead Milkman song called Bitchin' Camaro. So anyways, I got the Bitchin' Camaro, and you'll have to look up that song if you don't. Or you don't have to look up that song, but it's a funny song anyways. I'm just trying to see which way I want this layout to go. With, I think, maybe like this at the top. No. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But it is a little different on different sides. Just trying to figure out which way is the top. I think this is going to be my top. I think this is the bottom. This is the top. Okay. So I drove his bitchin' Camaro for about a year. And then I went off to London for a semester. And while I was in London, I just left I just called him and said, okay, I'm going to England now, and so I'm just gonna leave your car here on campus. And, I don't know what happened to it after that, but it was like the magical car gift fair, the gifted car fairy. That was pretty cool. He's a nice guy. We've remained friends, and he actually lives in Orlando now, and he's a super nice guy. But we weren't meant to be. That's all. That happens, right? But he ended up he kind of goes in between here in Florida, but he's been down here for a while now. Couple of years, 3 or 4 years at least. And he's actually come over to visit. And so my husband's met him a couple of times. And he almost feels like it's been so long that it doesn't really feel like he was my, those romantic feelings aren't really there, and they haven't been for a very long time. So it's more like, almost like a brother, because he's just somebody that's known me for a long time, and he knew my dad, and my dad's no longer with us, and because he died. But so I think sometimes like old boyfriends or girlfriends are good just because they know, just as friends, because they know they know you from way back when, I guess. And a lot of times you tell them so much more than you might tell, I don't know. You tell them all sorts of things, right? So it's probably good to keep them as friends rather than ending on bad notes. So I've always tried to have clean breakups. I think I sort of succeeded in that as much as you can. I think all of my old boyfriends are nice people. Okay, so we can see that cars will make you think of old boyfriends. Let's see, I'm just trying to see where the next one of these is going to go. Not there. Smaller one. Nope. There's various sizes. I guess I should have put them into order. So there's a tip for you. Maybe I could start doing that. Just make a little row of these so you can kind of figure out what size the circle you're going to need. See, there's a bunch of different circles there, a bunch of different sizes. Okay. I'm not going to worry about filling in the smaller holes. I'm going to put something in the back of it. So I want this size. There it is. That's easier. So my next story is Cape Cod. And that's a story of, I was picking up my sister at the Boston airport, or maybe she picked me up. I don't know. One of us was arriving and the other one had picked the other one up. And so whoever it was, I was going to drive back to where my mother was living at the time in Massachusetts. And so we were just, my sister lived with my mom and I lived with my dad. My parents were divorced. And so, but I still knew my way around Massachusetts pretty well. So I seriously, I don't know, maybe we were dropping somebody off at the airport. I really have no idea why we were headed back from the airport. But anyways, we started talking. And I want to say that one of us must have been getting picked up by the other one at the airport. Probably she was picking up me. And then probably I said something like, oh, I'm not going to let you drive. Give me the keys, I'll drive. And so that's probably why I was driving. Because I think I was driving. But we just started talking and talking, you know, because we hadn't seen each other in a while. And we were just all of a sudden, like, we kind of dawned on us that we weren't really on a highway anymore. We were like on some kind of back road. And we had driven, like, so we stopped. This was like long before cell phones. We stopped at a gas station, and it was just like a mom and pop gas station. And we were like, how do you get to, and we said the name of the town my mother was living in. And they were like, oh, you were like super on the wrong direction. Because you know how Cape Cod kind of, it makes that arm that goes out. We were we were practically at the tip of the arm. And that was just because we were like so into our conversation that we weren't really, like, we're just focused, like, whoever was driving. I want to say that it was me, but it might have been her. I don't know. I have to ask her. But we were just so focused on our conversation that the driving part was kind of automatic pilot. And, you know, we were paying attention to driving enough to drive safely, but we weren't really paying attention to where we were going. And so, yeah, that was funny. And that I don't really think would happen anymore because of, you know, most of the time when you're driving now, you usually have like a smartphone with you so that you know exactly where you're going. So if you'd never stop at a gas station nowadays, unless your phone was down maybe. But if there was two people, then probably the other person would have, you know, GPS on their phone or in their car. So that's like a story that I don't really think happens anymore. Speaking of phones, I just got a little text message. Oh, fun. I don't really text. Like, I have it and I'll tolerate it, but I'm not really a texter. I like to use email. Okay, so this isn't as bad as I thought it would be as far as getting it done. Okay, so my next story is my grandpa's car. And so when he was, after he died, well, when he was going to, like, I got the call, like, my mother called me in Florida. I was living in Florida, and she said, you better come back to Massachusetts because I think your grandfather is, you know, he's been admitted to the hospital, and they think that it's not good. He's probably not going to make it. So if you want to see him again, you better come up right away. So I was lucky enough my mother called me at like, say, I don't know, 9 in the morning. And I somehow called and got on a plane and was up there like it was just like all the stars aligned, you know? And I just got a flight, and it wasn't even very expensive. I didn't even have to use that death thing. But I got on a flight, and I just got immediately right up there to Massachusetts from down here in Florida. And I got to see him, and he was, you know, I even got to, like, the first couple of days that I was up there, he was still, like, well enough to talk. And so I got a nice, he was my favorite. Like, I loved him the most. He's the one that taught me about art, and I named my daughter after him, and he was just my favorite. But so, anyways, over the, like, I think I was up there for about a week when he died, and it was like, you know, you never want your people to die, but as far as dying goes, it was all right. I mean, everybody got a chance to see him. He didn't suffer for that long, and he lived, you know, he lived a good long life, and everyone loved him, and he went peacefully. But after he died, and while he was in the hospital, I guess they had given me his car to, because I didn't really have one, and my mother didn't want to have to be, you know, in charge of keeping track of where like, everybody was kind of in and out of the hospital. So anyways, they let me use his car while I was up there that week, and his car was just like, it was just like a regular car, but I don't know, I remember just thinking it felt so much like a go-kart. And so my sister smokes, and sorry, but I think everyone in the world knows that. But so anyways, I was kind of in charge of driving her around too, I want to say, during that week. And so a lot of, like, if she was smoking in the car, then I would make her have all the windows down. And so it was like, it was the same week that that John Kennedy got lost. So, like, as my grandfather was dying, that was, like, kind of on the TV. And even when I flew up there, I want to say that I saw the boats that were searching for him. But anyways, looking for this shape here. There we go. Finally found it. That was a trick. So it's good to line the circles up if you're doing this. But anyways, I just remember, like, he had those 8-track, like an 8-track. And even though it was, like, way beyond the time 8-tracks were popular, I think he did. He did when I was little, at least. I don't know. He just had a very basic car. And it was just felt like a go-kart, because we'd drive it around with the windows down, even if we were on the highway, because I didn't want to, you know, have all that smokiness in the car. And anyways, that's the story. It's not the most interesting story, but I remember that kind of vividly, driving his car, and then especially, like, after he died in the hospital, and then we drove his car back to his house where I was staying. It just, I don't know, it was just kind of nice. Like, it just kind of, it was so sad that he died. I was certainly sad about it, but it was just kind of, it was nice to be driving his car, because it just made me feel kind of close to him, even though he was gone. And it also made me feel like, oh, he's such a sweet guy, because he was, you know, he's from that greatest generation where they're just humble and hardworking, and even if they have a lot of money, doesn't mean they're going to spend a lot of money. Okay, so I'm thinking 1, 2, 3 on these. Here's Jessie, she's playing with her toys. So the next story is the minivan, and that's what I'm driving now. So I drive a Toyota minivan because it is safe and reliable, and I don't love driving it. You hear her? She plays with her toys, and she actually plays with them. She's so cute. But I'm not in a real hurry to replace my Toyota either because, you know, it feels like the kids are still young enough that they're still making a mess of the car. So, and, you know, we keep my car inside looking nice. We have somebody who does the detailing on it every once in a while, and that's a very welcome thing to have. It's a friend of ours, her son. That's his like little business, so we kind of feel good about supporting him and also getting our cars cleaned. It's a nice little luxury to have somebody do that for you. And anyway, so I drive a minivan. I don't love it, but I'm not in a hurry to replace it either. But someday I'd love to drive a convertible. So my next story is Kid, and that is when I was little, we lived, and my other grandparents lived in Calais, Maine, which is a tiny little town on the border of Canada. And so my grandparents, my father's parents, they had like 600 acres of land on the St. Croix River, which is like, you look over at Canada. And so to get to their house, it was like a very long gravel driveway, like through the woods. So you'd see animals like moose and bear and deer and stuff like that on the driveway. That was kind of common. But they used to, so one story about that, yeah, I'll tell the kids. So they used to let us drive, like when we were little. We'd get on their house, they called it Smuggler's Cove, and they would let us drive that road. So I've been driving since, like, I'd be on my dad's lap, but I've known how to drive a car since I was a kid. I'm just going to do one more right up there. And I think somebody just came home, so I'm going to have to, like, wrap it up very quickly. But the next story is about that same gravel road, and it was when I was much smaller, and my Nana was driving out to their house, which they called camp. Even though it was a big house, they called it their camp. I don't know why, but that's what people in Maine call their house if it's out in the woods. And so, anyways, I thought she was driving so slow, and I just couldn't, like, it was just painfully slow, and I could see the house, and I was really excited about getting there, and she was driving a Jeep Wagoneer, and I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I know that because I've heard this, I heard the story over and over again, and she's long gone too, but she used to tell the story, like when I was a teenager, she would always say, do you remember that time when you were about 4 years old, and you jumped out of my Jeep, and I rolled down the hill where they had blueberries growing, and she was terrified, and I thought that was like terrifically fun. And then, okay, I have one more story, and that is my dad's car. And the funniest story about him and a car is one time when my sister and I were visiting him. This was before I lived with him. This is when we were like still kids, and my parents were just divorced, and we used to go spend Christmas and like a week in the summer with him. He had driven us up to Calais and to visit my grandparents, and it was the winter time, and so he was driving us back to Bangor over what we call the Wee Hills. It was actually a road called the Airline Road, but it was like 2 lanes, and it was like seriously, like it just up and down, up and down. I would always, I would usually get car sick on those Wee Hills, and I didn't get car sick this time, but he was pulling his snowmobile, and so we went up like the very biggest hill of the Wee Hills, and the snowmobile like came off. We couldn't get up the hill, I think, and then the snowmobile kind of came off and then rolled down into the ditch, and then he was like, oh, what am I going to do? And again, this is like way before, you know, cell phones or anything like that. And he's like, well, I saw a hunter's lodge back there. I'm going to go see if the hunters can help me, you know, or I can leave my snowmobile at the hunter's cabin. And so he went and he said, well, you two stay in the car. Because, you know, in the 70s, parents always left their kids in the car. Like, they never, that just doesn't happen anymore. But, so he left us in the car. And, like, after a little while, like, it's really dark. Like, this is, you know, there's no rest stops. There's no, like, this is the woods. Like, the deep, dark Maine woods where you know, if you stop on the side of the road and you look up at the stars, they're the most stars you've ever seen in your life. And you're just, like, deep in the woods. You drive by a few towns, but if you blinked, you would seriously miss them because the town is like 2 houses. But, so we were getting a little creeped out in the car. So I was like, I'm going to go, you know, check on Dad because I'm going to go check on him. So you stay here, little sister. And my dad had said before he left, he was like, no, you know, keep the doors locked. And, you know, he didn't say don't let anybody in because there's nobody out there. But he was like, just, you know, he left the car running for us so it would stay warm. Like, you'd never do that with kids now. I don't think people do that. But after a little while, like, I went down the road to find him, and then my sister comes down a couple minutes later, and she's like 5 or 4 or 5 years old, and she's like, it's okay. I left the car running, and don't worry, because I locked the doors. And so now we're out on that, you know, out in the middle of nowhere in Maine in the dead of winter, and the snowmobile has fallen off. We can't get up the hill, and now we're also locked out of the car, which is still running. So the hunters helped us get into the car, and my sister said that they broke the window and we had to drive all the way back to Bangor with a broken window. And I don't remember that part, but I talked about that with her recently, and she said that was the case. But anyways, those are some of my stories about cars. And so I will be back. I'm going to go check on what's going on in the house, and I'll have hopefully finished this placemat sort of thing, and then I will make a couple pages with that, I'll make some stories about cars. Okay, thank you for watching. My name is Katie Scott, and I have a blog called Kiss and Tell Scrapbooking. But I haven't really been posting there very much, but I occasionally do. But mostly I've been doing the scrapbook videos on YouTube. So thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye.